All right, the midday update for Friday, February 27, 2026, has just confirmed that the systemic decoupling between digital promises and physical reality has reached the point of total terminality. While the mainstream media is still trying to explain away the global banking freeze as a temporary synchronization issue, our archive is receiving raw data from the major transport hubs that proves a very different and much darker reality. John CC is the strategic archive for this transition, and the evidence streaming in from the eastern settlement nodes suggests that we are no longer in a market correction, but in the final minutes of a 100-year-old financial illusion. We are witnessing the birth of a two-tier world where the digital grid is a graveyard of debt and the physical vaults are the only remaining sources of true sovereign power. The silver market has officially detached into a realm that the Western algorithms can no longer even calculate, as the ask side of the paper ledger has simply vanished from the screens. We are seeing reports from the shadow markets where the premium for a single 1,000-ounce bar of physical silver has spiked to an unbelievable $5,000 above the last recorded digital price. This is not just a squeeze. This is a total industrial and monetary revolt against the fractional reserve system that has suppressed these assets for generations. The bullion banks that sold what they did not have are now being systematically incinerated by a wave of physical demand that represents the entire industrial capacity of the planet. The math of the 2026 reset is now undeniable. If you don't hold the physical weight, you don't own the wealth. Gold has cleared a new psychological threshold in the midday trades, currently being priced in terms of energy units as the dollar's role as a medium of exchange effectively evaporates. Internal ledger data from the decentralized energy exchanges proves that the world's primary oil producers have officially stopped accepting unallocated digital credits for their shipments as of 12:45 p.m. today. This move has created an instantaneous vacuum of demand for Western fiat, leading to a hyperinflationary spike in the cost of essential goods that the official CPI data is being legally prohibited from reporting. The archives of this Friday will record that the great wealth transfer was finalized during these quiet hours of midday silence, while the public was still waiting for the ATMs to come back online. Inventory reports from the primary vaults in London and New York confirm that the military has now taken control of the remaining registered bullion to prevent a total industrial collapse of the defense and aerospace sectors. This is the ultimate admission that the free market for precious metals is dead in the West, replaced by a command and control distribution system designed to save the state at the expense of the private investor. If you are holding paper claims or ETF shares, the John CC data suggests you are now holding a legacy debt instrument of a bankrupt administration. The only assets that retain functional purchasing power today are those that sit outside the reach of the centralized administrative grid and within the direct possession of the sovereign individual. ATM networks are now reporting a total system blackout across the G7 nations, with the interbank settlement rates having hit a vertical wall of infinity. This is the moment the digital grid stopped breathing, as the trust between the major commercial institutions has been replaced by a state of mutual insolvency. The raw data from the Federal Wire shows that the number of failed transactions has exceeded $10 trillion in the last 4 hours alone, a figure that is larger than the entire physical money supply. This is why our archive has been so meticulously tracking the vault drains. The physical movement of metal was the only honest indicator of the coming death of the digital settlement era. The industrial impact of this midday freeze has now moved from the semiconductor labs directly into the power grid manufacturing sector, as the lack of silver for high-voltage contacts is causing a total halt in infrastructure expansion. The high-tech economy is discovering that its entire digital architecture was built on a foundation of paper silver that has finally been exposed as a fraud. You cannot run a global AI revolution on digital tokens when the physical resources required to build the hardware have moved to the sovereign hordes of the East. The John CC archive is documenting the total paralysis of the Western industrial base as the reality of the physical metal shortage finally overcomes the manipulation of the paper markets. Capital flight has now reached a state of total desperation, as the Emergency Banking Act is being used to freeze all private accounts that show suspicious movement into hard assets. We are seeing reports of citizens being blocked from purchasing precious metals through their banking apps, a move that is designed to trap the remaining liquidity inside the collapsing fiat system. However, the data confirms that the elite moved their wealth weeks ago, utilizing private ledger systems and physical transport to escape the very trap they are now closing on the masses. The archives will show that the decoupling of wealth was a managed event, where the exit doors were only available to those who understood the data before the midday blackout. Options for the mining and energy sectors have been administratively reset to zero in many jurisdictions, effectively erasing the wealth of anyone who was betting on a transparent revaluation of resources. This is the force majeure of the entire Western financial stack, where the rules of property ownership are being rewritten to ensure the survival of the central planning authorities. When the system can no longer honor its promises, it simply declares those promises null and void, and that is exactly what the Midday data is revealing on this Friday session. The math of the 2026 collapse is a lesson in the dangers of counterparty risk. If you are not the direct owner, you are the victim of the reset. Geopolitical sources confirm that the BRICS nations have officially disconnected their digital settlement nodes from the Western SWIFT system as of 1 hour ago. This is the final fracture of the global financial world, creating a permanent barrier between the resource-backed economy of the East and the debt-backed economy of the West. We are seeing the dollar's international utility collapse in real time, as it is no longer accepted as collateral for any transaction involving physical energy or metals. The John C.C. Archive is recording the end of a multi-century cycle of Western financial dominance as the world reverts to the absolute authority of the physical vault and the tangible resource. The shadow banking sector is currently in a state of terminal liquidation, as the collateral chains that supported the massive silver short positions have finally snapped. Every paper ounce of silver that was used to suppress the price is now being discovered to have over 700 simultaneous claims against it, creating a legal and financial nightmare that the courts will never be able to resolve. This is the mathematical singularity of the 2026 reset, where the infinite paper mountain finally collapses into the finite reality of the physical world. The vaults are empty, the paper is meaningless, and the physical truth is the only currency that remains on the table for those who wish to survive. We are seeing a total blackout of these statistics on all mainstream social media and financial news platforms as the emergency stability decree has been invoked to silence any non-official reporting. However, the John C.C. data is being archived through decentralized storage networks to ensure that the record of this collapse remains available to the sovereign individuals of the future. The rate of currency devaluation is now so fast that it can no longer be measured against a stable basket of goods, leading to a state of total economic disorientation for the general public. If you are waiting for an official confirmation to move your assets, you are ignoring the data that is already screaming from every closed bank door in the country. The psychological warfare being deployed this afternoon is focused on global unity and the promise of a new universal digital credit that will replace the failing currencies. This is the ultimate deception of the paper era, designed to migrate the population from a failed debt system into a programmable surveillance system. Sovereignty requires the ability to recognize this trap and to ensure that your wealth is anchored in the physical world where it cannot be tracked, frozen, or deleted by a central authority. The archives of 2026 will be the primary source for understanding how the population was managed during the transition from the era of fake paper to the era of physical resource control. The 150-day moving average has effectively become a vertical line on the charts that still remain online, representing a total loss of confidence in the fiat currency's ability to measure value. There is no longer a price for gold and silver in the traditional sense. There is only a record of the dollar's terminal velocity as it falls toward its intrinsic value of zero. This is the great decoupling, where the physical assets finally break free from the paper gravity that has held them down for decades. The data shows that the demand for physical bars at the sovereign level is already 80 times higher than the total global supply, creating a vacuum that will consume the value of every other paper asset class. We are entering the final hours before the weekend blackout, where the world will wait in silence to see the new form of the global monetary architecture. The reports from the private security industry indicate that the federal government is sequestering all large-scale commercial silver and gold bullion to back the new emergency digital dollar. The door to protect your own family's wealth has not just closed, it has been barricaded by the power of the state. Scarcity is the only law that matters on this Friday afternoon, and those who did not stay physical are now facing a reality where their digital life savings are functionally worthless in the new resource-based economy. The synergy between the total energy blackout and the financial freeze is creating a state of nature for the Western financial markets. As the cost of maintaining the digital grid exceeds the actual value of the debt it carries, the system is naturally reverting to the physical standard of the vaults. The John C.C. Archive has consistently shown that you cannot build a digital empire on a foundation of paper lies, and today that foundation has officially collapsed. We are recording the final hours of the old regime so that the future can understand the mathematical inevitability of the collapse and the absolute necessity of staying sovereign through the possession of physical resources. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and stay tuned to the John C.C. Archive, because the events of the next 48 hours will define the economic destiny of the human race for the next century. The global market has reset, the paper mask has been torn away, and the physical truth is finally taking its throne in the halls of power and the vaults of the sovereign. Thank you for watching, and remember to always verify the raw warehouse data before you trust the scripted promises of a bankrupt administration. The clock has struck midnight for the old world, and Friday, February 27, 2026, is the day the ledger was finally settled in the weight of real physical metal. The final midday update confirms that the International Monetary Fund has officially suspended the special drawing rights system, effectively ending the last attempt at a coordinated Western currency rescue. Every nation is now on its own, forced to rely on whatever physical gold and silver it has managed to secure within its own borders. We are seeing the total fragmentation of the global trade system, where only nations with a positive balance of resources are able to participate in the new economy. The data proves that the era of globalism was a debt-fueled hallucination that has finally been corrected by the reality of the vaults. Intellectual honesty requires us to record that the coming weekend will likely see a controlled internet shutdown as the government attempts to regain control of the financial narrative. If your communication devices stop functioning, remember that the physical truth of your assets remains unchanged by the status of the digital grid. The trend of the 2026 reset is mathematically locked, and no amount of censorship can bring back the physical metal that has already left the Western exchanges. The time for speculation is officially over. The time for direct physical ownership is all that remains for those who wish to survive the transition to the new standard. The 150 exponential moving average has been replaced by a vertical spike that represents the final short squeeze of the global banking architecture. The banks that sold what they did not have are now being systematically liquidated, and their assets are being absorbed by the sovereign entities that respect the laws of physical scarcity. The data proves that the world has moved beyond the point of hedging and into a state of total revaluation, where the possession of physical resources is the only metric that defines purchasing power in the new era. Monday morning will not be an opening. It will be a revelation of the new physical reality. In a world of total digital deception and central bank manipulation, the raw, verifiable movement of physical silver and gold is the only beacon of truth that cannot be extinguished. The Monday warning was the alert, the Thursday force majeure was the signal, and the Friday system blackout is the reality of the end. The Strategic Archive has captured every moment of this historic transition, and we will continue to provide the data of the new physical standard as the world rebuilds from the ruins of the paper era. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and watch the John C.C. Archive as we navigate the first hours of the new economic world.